No, but we will.
We will.
We will. I have a question for Dr. Roscoe. Canales Science Gonzalez, weren't they all founders of Lulac and,
Yes.
and presidents of Lulac in the early days
Yes.
in Castaneda?
No,
No,
he
not-
was a member, but not a national or state leader, officially.
And where is it that, like, I've always understood that the Garcias out of Corpus were the original founders.
You're really talking about the Garzas, Ben Garza. Okay, Ben Garza was the first president of National Lulac in Corpus in 1929. However, he was, Perales orchestrated his selection because Perales never sought power for himself. He could have made himself the first president. And they didn't even make Canales the first president either, or MC Gonzalez. They didn't want San Antonio or Perales, Canales to have, you know, they weren't power hungry. So they said, you know what? Ben Garza is a good Order Sons of America leader. He doesn't have a lot of education, but he is intelligent and he's a successful businessman and he has charisma. Let's select Garza as our first president.
So it was not Hector P. Garcia, one of the...
Okay, that's another myth. And what I see too is that all of us, including LULAC members, we need history classes. Okay, because I see I don't see any 20-year-olds in here, or not a few 20-year-olds. But those folks, the 20-year-olds now have access to Latino studies. Well, you know what? Previous generation, there was no access, so we also need classes, and I'm happy to facilitate some of that in the future. Anyway, back to the Garcia question. Dr. Hector Garcia was a LULAC member in Corpus, a member of the Veterans Committee in Corpus Christi. Okay, so without LULAC, there is no GI Forum, and it's the LULAC network nationally that helped to create the American GI Forum. Okay, so I'm telling you, LULAC, LULAC, LULAC.
Thank you. And one thing that's so interesting is that Perales was in his late 20s when he was a leader
Yes.
of the Knights of the Sons of America. And he was 31 years old when LULAC was founded, and he was 32 years old when he became a national president. I find that to be just totally amazing. I mentioned earlier that about 8 years ago, I participated in a LULAC function along with Ray Valdez, my good friend. And this was to commemorate the 50th year when John Kennedy had met with Lulac. And the next day he was assassinated. But one of our missions in being a committee member was to create a website. And what we began doing was looking for historical information. So my uncle, who had been a LULAC member for 70 years, told me he had a collection at the Houston Public Library. So we went and looked for it. It was a little box with photos and historical documents, news clippings. And there was a little information there, but we found out that there was 100 collections at the Houston Public Library just sitting in boxes. We're talking about thousands of feet, linear feet of collections that had never been digitized. As we did more research, we found out that there was collections that had been digitized, but they were over here sitting at the University of Arizona or at UCLA or at University of Texas. And so this began an 8-year effort, volunteer work, about 8,000 hours, of working with the Houston Public Library to find a way to digitize those collections that existed, to find other collections in other locations, universities, other websites that existed, and to find a way to collaborate and bring those together. Well, as I mentioned, I'm not a historian, I'm a banker, spent 45 years in operations and technology, and my last 5 years was involved in the planning process to migrate from a paper-based environment for checks to a image environment. So I decided to put that to work, and it worked. And I'm happy to say that during the pandemic, we made significant strides. And one of the things that we've been able to do is create a website on the Houston Public Library that now has 32 links to different Latino websites. And some of these are material. As an example, on this website, we have a link to the PBS Latino American videos. We have links to the Tejano Handbook, where Dr. Orozco has written over 80 articles. And so you can go into the site, type in Dr. Orozco, you type in Lulac, and you can find all kinds of articles about our history. One thing that was really, really interesting is that we saw that we have this newsletter that goes back to 1931. And we saw that we had maybe about 20 of those newsletters that have been digitized in a website called the Portal to Texas History. About a year ago, I got a call from a fellow by the name of Isidro Garza, who's doing research trying to find a council number. And in doing that research, I found out that there was a repository at University of Houston, University of Texas, that had 50 newsletters that had been digitized that nobody even knew about. And then we found out we had more than 100 of those newsletters at the Houston Public Library just sitting in a box. So we found funds to digitize those and bring everything together. And now we have a repository with more than 230 newsletters going back to 1931, which history that is history that's now being repeated today. If you look at some of those topics and some of those articles. And so today what I wanted to share with you is number one is the website that we have. We at Houston Public Library, and then a website that I've been working on for about 8 years that has not only Lulac, but history about the Chicano movement, history about the La Raza Convention, where we actually have video footage of that convention. We have video footage of John Kennedy's speech, his last speech that he gave in Houston, Texas. We have video footage of a young lady who was 16 years old who helped create the little school of the 400, who never got credit. And we have a video of her at 16 years old, and we have a video of her at 78 years old telling her story. So, Robert, can you help me? I'm not good at, I need a mouse to navigate through this. This is the landing page that we created at the Houston Public Library. And each one of these is a link to a specific website. Like, such as this one, if you tap this one here, this will take you to a website that we created for the John Kennedy 50th anniversary. If you type the one at the very top called Video of JFK, get it? Yeah, that little X button at the top. Yeah. 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 Just get out of that. Let's go back. Let's go back to. All right.
I think you have to go back online, go back to the internet. The signal.
Okay, this is not gonna work. But anyway, if you go to this website here, you can see that there's a link that gets you to the this website here of JFK, to the Lulac, and within this website here, you'll see the actual video footage of John Kennedy and Jackie Kennedy speaking at that event. There is something here called Lulac Historical Timeline. Ray and I work with an organization called Arte Publico Press. And what they did was they created a digital timeline of Lulac's milestones, starting from 1929 to present. And within that timeline, digital timeline, you can access videos, such as the one of Kennedy's speech. You can access timelines such as a video of Isabel Viver, who was the founder, actually the creator of the Little School of the 400, back in 1957. You can access news articles and so forth. So it's an interactive timeline that we just got approval from Domingo to put on the national website and to disseminate to all members.
Wow.
So this is an example of the timeline, and as you can see, it begins in 1929. It's a beautiful piece of art and a beautiful piece of history. We're very, very proud of it.
Why does it not go to 1921? You were saying we were 100 years, so what happens?
We actually began at the founding of Lulac in 1929. And in all honesty, we based this on work that Dr. Orozco had done. She's the one who created the significant milestones.
You didn't answer my question. We're saying 100 years, 1921. So what happens? You didn't look at 1921?
No.
Oh.
No. We began working on this 8 years ago, and we began at timeline 1929. We plan to go back as far as we can,
Does it find archives?
if we can find the archives.
I see.
Okay, can we back out of this? I want to show it. The last item I want to show is this one here. It's called Mas Latino. This is a website that I've been working on for about 8 years.
Oh.
And here is a website dealing with the 50th year anniversary of John Kennedy's visit. Here's a website dedicated to Ramsey Muniz. We actually found video footage of Ramsey Muniz in El Paso talking with Corky Gonzalez and Hale, strategizing in a hotel room.
Wow.
Yes.
If you go up, or go, can you go up a little bit more? We have a website dedicated to the Little School of 400 with actual video, 2 videos there. One video is of Isabel Viver, who was a 16-year-old girl who's had the idea of teaching 400 words to predominantly Spanish-speaking children, with the hope that they would pass from the first grade to the second grade, which they did. They had a 98% pass rate the first year that they did this. But also we have a video of one of the administrators. He worked for the president of Lulac, a guy by the name of Tony Campos, who we interviewed when he was 98 years old last year.
Wow.
This website is a beautiful website. It's the most extensive website that exists today, called Latinopia.
Wow.
If you ever have a chance, check it out. This is the videos that I had spoken about earlier. It's a PBS documentary, about 6 hours of video. Could you go up a little bit more? My dear friend, Vinny Martinez. We have a website dedicated to Vinny. We have Lulac.org. You go up. Here is the Houston Public Library. This is the one that, with the help of Dr. Orozco, we were able to find the very, very, very first issue of Lulac. If you could hit that one, I'll give you an idea. This concept, what we had to do is we had to tie this to a spreadsheet so that we could link where they're coming, because they're coming from all kinds of sources. So it starts at 1931, goes all the way down to 2000, but if you could hit this one, they'll give you an idea of how significant this history is.
Go to the link, click on it, yeah.
When we found this, I told Dr. Roscoe, hey, I found the #2 issue. And she told me, I think I've got #1 somewhere. So she checked her archive and lo and behold, here it is. This is a masterpiece. This is probably the most significant historical document that we have found regarding Lulac.
Oh, wow.
And what's really interesting is if you go to the very first page here, maybe scroll up a little bit. because it'll show who the first publicity director was. Yeah, go up a little bit more. Because I got a little story about the publicity director. Yeah, here it is. Fellow by the name of Felipe Valencia. Okay, when we found this repository of these newsletters, I posted this on Facebook. And a friend of Millie's, my wife, called up crying. She says, "That's my grandfather." She said, "I knew my grandfather was a member of Lulac, but I did not know he was a leader." We later found out that he was a good friend of Alonso Perales. So, and she was supposed to be here today. Also, Marta Perales, the daughter of Alonso, was supposed to be here today. Because of the COVID situation, she couldn't make it. But let me close with this. These websites are available today. But my goal is to get these into the hands of educators and ultimately to the students. Because we have a wealth of history here. What we have is a foundation to grow this. Our dream is to add not only our history, but our culture, and, the arts, our literature, culinary, all aspects of Latino cultural heritage. So, any questions for myself or for Dr. Orozco?
I guess if we ourselves find stuff, like my mother was a member of Lulac in Houston, and she was invited by Lulac Houston because I was the undocumented child, and actually I go to public schools. So Lulac and they told my mom go to court. So I was sitting in the courthouse, and we went all the way to the Supreme Court, the Doe versus Plyer, to let me, the undocumented illegal alien, attend public schools. So if I find, my mother passed away, but I know she attended the Lulac meetings to help us prepare for the court case. If I find those newsletters, or, because I went to the Fiesta supermarket, I was 8 years old, and I was putting flyers on all the windows. I have a picture of me in Houston in a parade diciendo justicia para los niños inmigrantes. Wow. So where do I send this to continue your work?
Raise your hand, David. Raise your hand, Dad.
Send it to David.
David Lulac history.
A lot of folks have papers or materials. Number one, don't throw anything away. Okay, and when you know you have something especially important, such as the law case that you're referring to, is that about 1970 or 1982?
1982. Doe versus Plyer.
Okay.
That undocumented kids go to school.
Okay.
And we're using that court case to defend the DACA and the Dreamers.
Okay. Contact a professional archive, typically in a major city. So if you're in Houston, I would contact.
Right now I'm in Dallas.
In Dallas, contact. Well, let's see. I don't know Dallas that well, but one of the universities in Dallas.
Okay.
And it actually depends. Since that's relevant to Houston, you might donate it to a Houston library. You could locate it to the Houston Metropolitan Research Center or the University of Houston. Yes.
Texas Christian, TCU had a project, and I wonder how many of you were involved, but they said they went throughout Texas. They got us in Odessa, but they were documenting all of the Chicano history. And apparently it was a grant, I don't know what it was, but it was called the Black and Brown Project.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Are you, okay.
Yes, that comes out of, that's a professor named Max, how do you pronounce his name? Crockwell. So yeah, there's a book that was produced out of that called Black and Brown.
And also that link to those interviews is on the Houston Public Library.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So don't throw things away. But really, every council of Lulac should have a small archive, should have an archive. But you do need to connect to a major, typically a major university library. The local libraries don't have the facilities or the know-how. It has to be a professional university archive or something like the Houston Metropolitan Research Center. Yes,
Isn't the University of Texas the Lulac Archive?
Yes.
Repository?
yes, okay, also, just for
Your info.
I did connect with National President Ruben Bonilla.
Yes.
Either was 79 or 80. So I believe my asking about archives helped to create the Lulac Archive in 1980.
And the
That-
Bonilla's donated all their.
Yes, okay, but Houston, I would say Houston, El Paso, UT Austin, and even Iowa have the best Lulac collections. Okay, but every state should have one at their major university. And really, that is how, we can't write history unless there's materials. We can do oral histories. And of course now with the internet, there's ways to get to old newspapers from way back. But still, the paper material is still important because that's how a lot of history gets written.
You know, one thing interesting about the University of Texas collection is that it is huge, but most of it is not digitized. It's just sitting in boxes. And I was telling someone the other day that there is a fantastic collection of Ramsey Muniz. And there's about 11 reel-to-reel videos just sitting in a box. They've been sitting in boxes for about 30 years now. And they've never been converted and digitized. So.
Also, for everyone's info, digitization costs a lot of money and it requires a lot of labor. So that's why things are not digitized. Of course, young people have a lot of energy and almost everything could be digitized.
Cynthia, what
Yes.
about San Antonio? There was something at St. Mary's, college. Do you remember that?
I'm not aware of that. But I do feel sad for San Antonio
I can find out.
because San Antonio really didn't have archivists that were really going out for Latino stuff. So the Perales collection, for example, really should have ended up in San Antonio, but it's not. So a lot of your history is in Houston at U of H. And even UT Austin has a lot of stuff from San Antonio that's not there. But in the last 10 years, I would say, UTSA, the Institute of Texan Cultures, they have a women's project, and UTSA is more active seeking out Latino materials. But decades ago, they weren't. They were behind the ball. Any other comments or questions? Yes. Yes, sir?
Okay, I have a question. Are your books available as ebooks like on Amazon or anything?
Yes. And I sold out. I had 2 boxes of the No Mexicans book. I sold out yesterday, but I have 5 books left of the Adela Sloss Bento book. In spring, it will be paperback because hardback right now is $40, which I think is a lot for many people, but $25 in spring. But please, every public library can order these books, so please get your public library to order them. I actually use a library more than buying books because it gets expensive. But get your public libraries to order them because more people can read it. Another comment or question? And I would like to, before we end, I want to thank David Contreras because he really, in my opinion, he has created a revolution. Which, what I mean by that is that he cares about this history, and he's the first person that I feel is advocating for me to help you and to help us. And it's because of him that this session was made possible. Another comment, quick comment or question?
Well, I have a question. When were women allowed to join Lulac General? Right?
Okay.
Their own.
Okay, Ladies Lulac, which was
I don't
second.
care about ladies. I want to know when it became.
Okay, well, Ladies Lulac was created in 1933, separate councils for women, men with men, women with women. But as you know, and some of you are veteranas in here, because of the Chicana feminist movement and the women's movement in general, in the late 60s and early 70s, they started to say, hey, why do we have separate councils? And you know, we're intelligent, we're powerful, we're political. let's get together. And so the women fought that. And of course, we had feminist separate councils for a while, but mostly after the 1970s, they became the mixed council. And we still have, I think there might, I don't know if there's a holdout anymore, but Corpus Christi was horrible in allowing women, and I don't know what other places. Even the club, the Houston clubhouse was a male hangout.
It sure
Okay.
was.
But things have changed.
And that's true. I had an uncle who was a member of Lulac for 70 years. And the year before he passed away, he told me, you know, I wish we could go back to the old days. He said we had a women's council and we had a men's council. But before we depart, I want to introduce someone, Thelma Ibera. She is from the Mexican American Civil Rights Institute. And she has a couple of words. She's going to introduce it. She's going to introduce it. And before we leave, and thank you so much. This has been wonderful. Please go across the hall. We have a memorial dedicated to our Lulac brothers and sisters who have passed away during the COVID pandemic.
Thank you. This will just be really short. I was at another session, but I wanted to make sure that I came in here and recognized an individual that we have in San Antonio that has been at the forefront of growing, helping us establish, but also growing our Mexican American Civil Rights Institute, the first institute of its being in the entire country. And I want to introduce a young lady that has helped us grow the concept of Mexican American Civil Rights Institute, Miss Sara Gould. Sara, if you want to come up and just please say a couple of words, and please, before I lose your minds, because I know everyone's hungry, please write down on your paperwork, Mexican American Civil Rights Institute.com or Mexican American Civil Rights Institute.com o pongan Macri.com y de ahí van a ver todo el trabajo lindo que hay in archiving our history and etc. Sara.
Thank you, Velma. Velma, if you don't know her, she's a longtime Lulac leader and also on the board of Macri, as they call it, the Mexican American Civil Rights Institute. And just in case you were writing that down, somosmacri.org is our website. We'd love for you to check us out. We're only 2 years old. Velma's one of our founding board members. And we've been so fortunate to be able to work with people like David and Cynthia on projects in that time that we've been around for 2 years. We are building a national center to be a place where the public can come and learn about Mexican American civil rights history. There is no civil rights history in the US if you don't include Latinos and Mexican Americans, right? As Mexican Americans work to advance civil rights in this country, we're bringing the whole country forward with us. So it's not just about us, it's about this whole country and what this country stands for. We want to eventually have a place where people, families can come see exhibits about the history of Mexican American civil rights. I want you to be able to see an exhibit about Alonso Perales. I want you to be able to see an exhibit about Adela Pinto and all of these important people. I want those names to be just as well known in the country as Rosa Parks and all these other wonderful people. We are also working on building an archive portal that will try to connect all of these fantastic projects that are happening around the country, like the projects that David's been working on for years and years, like the projects that the University of Houston Recovery Project has been working on for years and years, but it will be a way for students and teachers to just very easily find primary resources for developing lesson plans, for writing school papers and projects and things like that, but just all around that theme of Mexican American civil rights. So, of course, Lulac's going to play a part of all of this. Just keep an eye out for us. We're very young, so it's just growing. We have our inaugural digital exhibit opening later this month. We also just this last week, August 13th and 14th, we had a 2-day virtual symposium Some of you may have joined us, but if you didn't, all those videos, well, thank you for joining us. All of those videos are online for you to watch at either Facebook or YouTube if you just look at them. Thank you so much. SomosMapri.org.
Once again, thank you very much, and please a hand for Dr. Cynthia Orozco. Thank you.
I promised her lunch, and you're welcome to join us if you want to come home. So say like this I was just telling you, there is a Lulac facility in Laredo that they purchased and owned since 19...
Around 40, I think that's when it is an old Methodist church. And it's
That's one of the contenders when you're looking. Yes, that's a cool story.
we have a board of directors that it hasn't been updated since 1992. We went to the county clerk's office and did the research, and so we found out that the board of directors hasn't been updated since then. But I believe we acquired the building sometime in 1930, 1940. I have this going live on the state page. I'm gonna end this. It's been live. Let me just.